Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laos. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. I've got a quick tip to share with you today around the power of efficiency in your conversations with people, getting to the heart of the matter. I had set up a conversation with somebody that I met on Clubhouse. And as I often do, I love to check in with people and connect with them to see how we could either collaborate or simply get to know each other better so we can support each other's businesses. Well, on this particular conversation, the woman said, "Well, tell me about yourself." And it was that classic question that I'm so grateful I followed my own advice. And I would recommend that you do this too, because I want to tell you how the conversation shifted. And it was simply because I stopped and did one thing. That is, I paused and I said, "Well, what about you, about me, most interests you?" And that's when she started talking all about herself. And it was perfect because imagine the alternative. If I had started talking about me and my background and where I came from, where I live now, my business, I could have gone on to a potential data dump of information about myself when that isn't truly what she wanted. So allow me to continue here. She said, as she proceeded to talk about herself, probably took about 5 minutes or so. And then she started talking about her challenges with communication, how she tends to ramble. And she's also been given that feedback before. So the coolest part was that she said all of that to say, "Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, what could you do for me? I'd love to know more about how you work with your clients." And therein started this wonderful conversation to where I was able to get to what she really cared about. It was a lot more efficient and it helped her see how I could actually help her. She didn't need to know, or frankly, I know she cares about me, but she didn't care about where I'm from and how I got to where I am now and my career path and my business and all of that. She really wanted to know, like most of us, how does what you do or who you are relate to me? So the next time you're having a conversation and somebody asks you one of those open-ended questions, instead of going on a roll with it with the way you think it should go or the way you immediately have that gut reaction to answer around, stop, ask the question, "Well, what would you most like to know?" Or "What about that or about me most interests you?" That's going to help you create more focus as well as clarity. And the coolest thing in this particular case is that she did become a client of mine. And this is one example of the power of asking the right questions and sometimes even simply asking a question. Another example of this is when you are working with somebody and you're making some assumptions and you have expectations. Let's face it, we all have assumptions and expectations. And sometimes we think we know what it is, or we think we're so clear. We assume at the end of the meeting, "Oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know what she's or he's doing." And instead of simply walking away from that and going, "Oh, great, great. Well, let's meet back in a couple of weeks." A really great question to ask is, what does done look like to you? So I know we just both agreed on we're both going to get that thing done. But what does that actually look like? And you could even front load this by saying something like, "I know in the past, sometimes I thought I was so clear. And then it turns out later when we both came back with what we considered done, we each had very different opinions about what done looked like." Or in the words of Brene Brown, I love what she says is, "Paint done for me." That is a beautiful way to be clearer, leave with those meetings and know exactly, okay, who's doing what next and what does that actually look like? Because as we know, we want to be as efficient as possible with our communication. We want to get to the heart of the matter so we can move on and just simply get to work and do the things that we want to get done. So, number one, thinking about that first scenario when somebody says, tell me about yourself, or they ask you primarily something about you, say, well, what about me most interests you? Or what is it that you would most like to know? And then another power question is, paint done for me, although that's technically a statement, but essentially it's inquiring, it's probing from someone else. Or what does that look like? And those are two framing questions that can be incredibly helpful, can help you be more efficient in your conversations and simply have an even better, well, saves you a lot of time. Speed and efficiency. Isn't that what all we care about most? And I'm going to throw in one other thing here. I know this is more focused on asking particular questions and getting to the point so that we can be more efficient. But another piece about efficiency is to make sure that you're not giving a data dump of information to somebody. You're being clear, you're being simple, and you're giving one or two things so that you don't overload somebody with information. That will also help you to be efficient in your messages, because nobody wants to be overloaded. Nobody wants to be overwhelmed. And more importantly, how that comes across to you when you do give way too much information is that people tend to tune out. So we want to make sure as well that you are heard, that you are seen, and that you come across with the best representation of you possible. So have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever time you are listening to this. And I look forward to seeing you at next week's episode. And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laos. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laos. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.